Right before my mother passed away, she said to me and my sister, if either of you ever gets bullied one day, then the other party must absolutely not go soft. You must exact justice for the other at all costs. So when my sister Alara, who had depended on me and lived with me for 18 years, accidentally spilled some mysterious stain on the custom suit of the Capital Circle's golden boy, and was subsequently sent to the great beyond on his private yacht, I didn't cry, nor did I make a fuss. I simply and silently did two things. The first thing, I found out that the person this arrogant golden boy loved the most was Serafina, the CEO of the Sue Corporation. The second thing, I exhausted every possible method to become Serafina's personal assistant. Late at night, in a hotel reeking of expensive paper and intoxicating gold, I supported Serafina, staggering all the way to the presidential suite at the very end of the hall. The woman beside me had consumed quite a bit of alcohol today. A faint trace of red flushed across her exquisitely beautiful face. Her eyes were tightly shut, and her breathing carried a heavy, intoxicating scent of wine. I skillfully swiped the room card to open the door. With one hand, I fished the phone out of Serafina's pocket and dialed the number she had pinned to the very top. Waiting until the person on the other end answered the call, I intentionally let go, allowing the woman to accidentally wrap her arms around me, before crashing heavily onto the bed behind us. And this particular sound, when heard from the other end of the phone, carried a completely different, spicy implication. Sure enough, the person on the other end of the line was instantly ignited. Serafina, where are you? There's a man over there, isn't there? Before the person on the phone could completely lose his marbles, I hung up the phone with impeccable timing. Everyone in our circle knew just how much Julian loved Serafina. They had grown up together as childhood sweethearts. Even though Serafina was known for being cold, self-disciplined, deeply affectionate, and entirely loyal, having only Julian in her heart, and always keeping a 3-mile distance from other men, he still had absolutely zero sense of security. From childhood to adulthood, he never allowed any man to get within a 3-meter radius of her. You only care too much when you love too much. If there ever came a day when he completely lost her, I was afraid he would go absolutely feral, and this was exactly what I wanted. Today, I deliberately orchestrated this little misunderstanding. I suspected that in less than half an hour, he would come knocking on the door with the wrath of 1,000 thunders. I hooked my lips into a smirk. Then, I tossed the phone to the side, walked into the bathroom to wet a towel, and walked back to the living room. I intentionally unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of my shirt, letting a little collarbone peek out. The beautiful woman on the bed was still sound asleep. I stepped forward, bent down, and gently leaned in close to her, wiping her face. She truly lived up to her reputation as the high mountain flower that all the men in Ocean City couldn't even dream of touching. Exquisite facial contours, an absolutely breathtaking face. Any man who looked at her would inevitably feel his heart skip a beat. But what I wanted wasn't something so simple. I increased the pressure of my hand slightly. The woman knitted her brows, and then opened her eyes. After getting a clear look at the face of the person in front of her, her eyes instantly clouded over with confusion. Immediately, she grabbed my hand and interrogated, "What are you doing?" I channeled my inner frightened Bambi, dodging and shrinking back slightly. "Boss, you had too much to drink. I haven't been at the company for long, so I didn't know where you lived. I had no choice but to book a room upstairs from the banquet hall for you to rest. I was afraid you wouldn't sleep comfortably, so I was just wiping your face with a wet towel." Hearing my explanation, Serafina's expression finally softened a bit. She clutched her chest and gasped for breath. As she lowered her eyes, her gaze inadvertently landed on me. Feeling her stare, I quickly and frantically grabbed my collar with my hand, looking like a scandalous maiden. Urgent knocking sounds from the door rang out right on cue. "You little toy boy, get out here right now! You dare to have designs on my woman? Are you tired of living? Open the door!" I jumped off the bed in a calculated panic, lowering my voice, hastily pleading for mercy from Serafina. "Boss! We can't let Mr. Julian know I'm in here. A lone man and a lone woman alone in a room. No matter what we say, Mr. Julian will never believe it. If he sees me in here, my job is as good as gone. I am begging you, please." I kept my small face deathly pale, making myself look increasingly weak and helpless. Serafina furrowed her brows, silently agreeing to my request. I acted as if a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders, quickly running into the bathroom to hide. I looked at myself in the mirror, and the fragile expression vanished without a trace. "Julian, the good show is about to start. You better catch the punch as well." The room door opened, and Julian barged in, furiously, practically breathing fire. He scanned the surroundings, but only saw Serafina alone. The raging fire in his chest dissipated a little. Only then did he notice Serafina's slightly haggard face, and he hurriedly and affectionately supported her. "Serafina, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell somewhere?" Serafina extended her pale, slender fingers, gently massaging her temples, her voice cold and clear. "I had a few too many drinks at the banquet tonight, so I just got a room upstairs to rest. What's the matter? Who has been chewing your ear off with nonsense again, making you so upset?" Julian looked extremely guilty, pursing his lips and forcing a smile. His gaze still darted suspiciously around the room. "I just came to check on you. Who told you to be so outstanding? There are tons of men in Ocean City lining up for you. If I'm not on high alert, and one day someone snatches you away, where am I supposed to go cry?" Serafina let out a helpless, light chuckle, resting her head against his chest. "Julian, do you really not know who is in my heart? After all these years, have I ever given another man a second glance?" Serafina was usually aloof and icy, Since joining the company, I had never seen her with such a gentle expression. It seemed she truly loved Julian deeply. Serafina's words finally made Julian drop all his defenses. The remaining doubts in his heart were completely swept away by her soft whispers. He helped her sit on the sofa nearby. "You drank too much, you need a good rest. I won't bother you anymore." Saying that, Julian turned around and was about to leave, but the very next second, a loud crash suddenly echoed from the bathroom. Julian's brows instantly twisted into a tight knot, his sharp gaze sweeping ruthlessly toward the bathroom door. "Who is in there?" No one answered from inside. He immediately made a move to march right in. At this critical juncture, Serafina stood up and walked to his side, hugging him tightly. "I was going to take a shower just now, so I turned on the shower head. I'm guessing the shower head just fell off. I already told you, I am the only one here. Do you still not believe me?" Julian lovingly patted her head. "How could I not believe you? I'm leaving right now. Don't be mad." In front of Serafina, the usually high and mighty crown prince of the capital circle was actually behaving so submissively. I smirked coldly. The more he cared about Serafina, the more I was going to make him suffer. As the door clicked shut with a clack, Serafina's cold voice sounded once again. "Come out." I walked out barefoot, acting as timid as a mouse. Just now I had deliberately turned on the shower head, soaking myself halfway. Right now my fluffy short hair was slightly plastered to my forehead, looking just like a little deer that had just stumbled out of the woods, refreshing and entirely innocent. Serafina scanned the man in front of her, her gaze indifferent and somewhat chilly. Seeing this, I quickly lowered my head, putting on a full display of being reserved and nervous. "Boss! I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to," Serafina spoke coldly. "Are you that afraid of him?" I bit my lower lip tightly, looking as if I wanted to speak but stopped myself. "I am afraid, but I am even more afraid of losing my job. This job is incredibly important to me." After finishing, as if terrified she would keep probing, I didn't wait for her to open her mouth and rushed to say my goodbyes. "Thank you for everything today. I won't disturb your rest. I'll be going now." As soon as the words fell, I grabbed my jacket and pushed the door open to leave in a frantic rush. Upon reaching the ground floor, I was just taking out my phone to hail a cab when the Rolls-Royce belonging exclusively to Serafina slowly pulled up right in front of me. The driver got out, opened the door, and greeted me. "Mr. Rowan, the CEO asked me to take you home." I froze for a split second, then pulled the car door wider and sat inside. With today's little theatrical performance, I was certain I had successfully caught Serafina's attention. However, she was always unfathomable, with a mind as deep as the ocean. I still couldn't afford to let my guard down. In the days that followed, I acted as if absolutely nothing had happened, peacefully doing my primary job duties. Even when I saw Serafina, I remained as respectful and distant as ever. Julian, however, came to the company a few times, and after seeing me coming out of Serafina's office, developed an extreme hostility towards me, because he never knew that by Serafina's side, there actually hid such a remarkably handsome man. I had never doubted my own physical appearance. Growing up, I had received plenty of special treatment because of my good looks, and this handsome exterior to Julian was a massive flashing red light threat. Because of this, every time he came to the company, he would make things difficult for me in 100 different ways. Ordering me to buy him coffee accidentally, spilling water all over me, ruining my documents, making me work overtime until extremely late. I never took these childish little parlor tricks to heart, nor did I ever speak a single word of complaint to Serafina. It's just that every single time I was bullied, I would accidentally make sure she happened to see it. That evening, after finishing a meeting and leaving the company, as Serafina passed by my cubicle, she looked at the man totally engrossed in his work under the desk lamp and unconsciously stopped in her tracks. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't do anything and simply walked straight away. I revealed a subtle smile. Julian's actions over these past few days had already planted a thorn in her heart. Now, I just needed to add a little more fuel to the fire. I had barely sat down at my desk when a resounding slap was thrown viciously right across my face. I was slapped so hard I hit the deck, tumbling to the floor. My cheek burned with a spicy, stinging pain. Above my head rang Julian's furious and vicious cursing. "I knew long ago you were a restless little rat, just as I expected. To climb up the social ladder, you sure are shameless enough. Today I'll let you know what the price is for offending me." I clutched my cheek, looking at the intruder with ultimate grievance. "Mr. Julian, I don't know what you are talking about." At this moment, the more pitiful and fragile I acted, the more uncontrollably furious Julian became. "Still daring to put on an act in front of me? You deliberately left your sandalwood perfume scent on Serafina's clothes, didn't you? Did you think I wouldn't notice?" I shook my head in a panicked frenzy. "It wasn't me. I didn't. Mr. Julian, you have misunderstood." "Misunderstood?" Julian sneered coldly and swung another vicious slap right at me. "You are the only person in this entire company who uses this perfume, and you still dare to argue? You dress yourself up so handsome and dashing every day. Isn't it just to seduce Serafina? What kind of innocent victim are you playing at in front of me now?" The commotion between us quickly attracted the other people in the company. The crowd surrounded me, whispering and gossiping non-stop. I told you he was no good, relying on his handsome face, trying to seduce CEO Sue. Truly disgusting. Exactly. Who knows, maybe he got into the company just by trading on his looks. I explained weakly. I really didn't. I don't have the slightest inappropriate thought about CEO Sue. "Mr. Julian, you really have misunderstood." How could the enraged Julian listen to a word of it? He grabbed me by my collar and dragged me toward the doorway. "Get on your knees right here. Let everyone see what kind of trash character you really have." After saying that, he ordered his accompanying bodyguards to violently strip off my clothes. since he has no shame anyway. Today I'll make sure he never has the face to stay here ever again." As soon as the words dropped, two men immediately stepped forward and started tearing at my clothes. I shrank into a terrified ball. "It really wasn't me, Mr. Julian. You really misunderstood." But no matter how bitterly I begged, Julian showed absolutely no intention of letting me go. The bodyguards pulled at my clothes forcefully. I struggled desperately, my eyes turning so red they looked like they were about to drip blood. "Enough!" A crisp, cold voice instantly interrupted this farcical circus. The main doors opened and Serafina strode toward the crowd with her long legs, step by step. Her entire body radiated a powerful, overwhelming aura, causing everyone to unconsciously shiver slightly. I lifted my teary eyes to look at her, my eyes instantly covered in a layer of white mist. "Boss!" My cheeks were slightly flushed, the clothes on my body torn and looking somewhat tragic, yet it somehow perfectly presented an aura of fragile vulnerability. Obviously, I hadn't said anything of substance, yet it felt like I had said everything. Serafina's eyes flashed, and the special assistant beside her immediately took off his jacket, draping it over my shoulders. The furious Julian off to the side couldn't swallow his anger. He was just about to open his mouth, but Serafina beat him to it. "Julian?" The perfume smell on the clothes was accidentally spilled by the maid at home. "If you don't believe me, you can go check the security footage." Julian froze, then blinked his eyes in guilty realization. He immediately grabbed her hand to grovel. "Serafina, I'm so sorry. I just care about you too much. I won't do this next time. Please don't be mad, okay?" Serafina's gaze darkened slightly, but perhaps because she loved him too much, she didn't say anything else, and merely asked the special assistant to send him home. After the crowd dispersed, she looked down at me, who was still kneeling and sitting on the floor. "Come to my office." Inside the CEO's office, I first sneered internally while sending a text to the maid. "Good job. The money will be transferred today." Then, when Serafina turned around, I silently hid the phone away, sitting on the sofa, shivering like a leaf. Serafina looked at the state of the person in front of her, and a strange, inexplicable feeling rose in her heart. She withdrew the sharpness from her eyes and spoke faintly. "Regarding today's matter, Julian wronged you. I apologize to you on his behalf. He just has an arrogant and spoiled personality, but he doesn't have any bad intentions. Don't hold it against him." "No bad intentions?" I laughed coldly in my heart, finding it ironic to the extreme. Today, with no bad intentions, he humiliated me in front of so many people. If he did have bad intentions, wouldn't I end up with the exact same tragic ending as my sister? Such a man, not only ruthless but fundamentally toxic, only warranted a few lightweight words in Serafina's mouth. Did she even know that my sister was murdered by this very Julian? That was the sister who raised me, to buy me a game console I liked. She didn't care if she worked at construction sites until her hands bled. Even with excellent grades that secured her a spot at a foreign university, in order to take care of me, she willingly gave up her studies to do the hardest, most grueling jobs. Even though our family was poor, my sister never let me taste the bitterness of life. Such a wonderful sister, and I could never see her again. Thinking of my sister, the tears in my eyes surged violently, unable to be stopped no matter what. I won't blame Mr. Julian, and I certainly won't blame you. I just hope that in the future, Mr. Julian won't misunderstand me anymore, so I can just work peacefully in this position. Seeing my fragile, pitiful appearance, Serafina couldn't help but knit her brows. "Is this job really that important to you?" My watery, glistening eyes trembled. "Yes, very important. My parents passed away when I was very young. It was my sister who gave up her studies and raised me. But a year ago, my sister also passed away. To pay for my schooling, the family owes a lot of debt, so I absolutely cannot lose this job." Hearing this, Serafina's eyes darkened. She didn't ask any further questions. "Calm your emotions down a bit. You can go out a little later." I nodded, leaned back on the sofa, and before long, actually cried myself to sleep. Serafina had seen countless handsome men in her life. Her clear eyes held no other particular emotion, but upon seeing my fair, handsome face, still hanging with crystal-clear teardrops, the light in her eyes couldn't help but flicker. She took a blanket from the side and draped it over me, half squatting in front of me, her expression cool and detached. Just as she was about to stand up, the sleeping man suddenly grabbed her hand, crying and pressing it tightly against his own face. "Sister, don't leave me! Sister, I miss you so much!" Serafina paused, hesitated for a moment, but gently pulled her hand free anyway. A few days later, Serafina was invited to attend a business banquet. As her assistant, I naturally tagged along. When Julian saw me at the banquet, although God knows how furious he was inside, he was constrained by Serafina's presence and could only grit his teeth and put on a show of magnanimity. He had half a mind to keep his eyes glued to me, but unexpectedly, after drinking just a few glasses, he became incredibly drowsy. He had no choice but to say goodbye to Serafina and head upstairs to rest early. Watching Julian leave, the corners of my mouth slowly turned up. Of course he would get drunk and leave early. Just now, when he asked me to fetch his wine, I took advantage of everyone's distraction and secretly dropped quite a few sleeping pills in it. Now that he wasn't here to be an annoying roadblock, everything became much more convenient. Many people at the banquet came to toast Serafina. She was in a good mood and practically accepted every single glass. Even with her impressive alcohol tolerance, she was starting to sway unsteadily. I helped her sit down on the side, casually poured a glass of water, and was about to hand it to her. Unexpectedly, my hand slipped, and the entire glass of water spilled right onto her clothes. I grabbed some tissues and clumsily scrambled to wipe it, but Serafina, breathing heavily, tightly gripped my wrist. "Don't move." Being yelled at by her like this, I froze completely. Only then did I seem to realize that the water had spilled in a very sensitive area. I hurriedly backed away several steps in a panic. I'm sorry. I'll go get a dry set of clothes for you." Serafina wore an icy expression, practically grinding her back teeth. "No need. You leave first." I didn't even dare to steal another glance at her. I quickly fished a room card out of my pocket, placed it on her table, and fled like a defeated soldier. Walking out of the banquet hall, I took the elevator straight to the 33rd floor. The room card I gave her was for Julian's room. It's just that Julian had already been escorted away by people I arranged. I changed my clothes, lay down on the bed, and then turned off the lights. Half an hour later, Serafina indeed took the room card and swiped open the door. She didn't turn on the lights, staggering in and taking off her outerwear. The air was permeated with a bewitching sandalwood scent, causing her to unconsciously reach out toward the sleeping person. She leaned over and kissed the person beside her, her voice gentle and melodic. "Julian." Our bodies pressed closer and closer, and the temperature in the air suddenly spiked. Just as the passion was deepening, Serafina's shoulders were pushed back by a pair of soft, large hands. "Boss!" In the darkness, the breathing of both people instantly halted. Serafina's drunkenness vanished in a split second. She abruptly pulled our bodies apart and blindly slammed the button for the bedside lamp. As the light illuminated the room, I immediately and awkwardly grabbed the blanket, nervously shrinking into a ball in the corner. Serafina's tone was as cold as solid ice. "Why is it you?" I hugged my arms tightly, my body still trembling slightly, looking as if I was terrified out of my wits. I didn't even dare to lift my head. I drank too much and felt dizzy, so I came upstairs to rest. "Mr. Julian wasn't feeling well and has already gone home. I didn't know you would come over." Even though I used the blanket to cover my body, it was still hard to hide the fresh hickey marks she had just left on my neck. Serafina's brows knitted tighter and tighter. She said nothing more, grabbed her coat, and left in a hurried rush. Watching her retreating figure, a triumphant smile appeared on my face. I knew it. Serafina was interested in my body. Otherwise, she wouldn't have lost control like that, wouldn't have wanted to possess me with such intense desire. I was going to step by careful step, completely tilt her heart toward me. Over the next few days, I hid whenever I saw Serafina. Even when there was official business and I had no choice but to face her, I absolutely refused to make eye contact. My behavior like this instead sparked Serafina's curiosity about me. This man who repeatedly played the weakling to gain sympathy in front of her, wasn't he just trying to deliberately catch her attention? Why was he actively avoiding suspicion now? Looking at my silhouettes, Serafina smirked coldly. Interesting. That day, Julian came to the New Universe group again. Unlike the usual routine, he didn't go looking for Serafina, but directly called me into the lounge. He pulled a bottle of shoe polish out of his bag and casually propped his foot up on the coffee table next to him. "Assistant Rowan, to attract Serafina's attention, you're willing to do any lowly, degrading task. Since that's the case, helping me shine my shoes shouldn't be too much to ask, right?" These days, he tried every possible way to torture me, using whatever dirty tricks he could think of. It was inconvenient for me to clash with him directly, so I could only squat down, half kneeling in front of him, and began polishing his shoes according to his demands. But since he was dead set on making things difficult for me, how could he easily let me off? Within moments, using the excuse that I wasn't putting my heart into it, he kicked me squarely, sending me tumbling to the floor. "You did that on purpose, didn't you? What a useless piece of trash. No wonder you're so good at wagging your tail and begging for pity in front of women." I knelt on the floor, apologizing non-stop, but he was relentless, grabbing the shoe polish and pouring it directly all over me. "I think we need some dark polish to cover up that poor, sour stench on you." Then he grabbed the cups on the table and mercilessly smashed them onto my body. "Get out of my sight!" My forehead was knocked red, and the back of my hand was sliced open by the glass shards on the floor. But I said nothing. I merely cleaned up the garbage on the floor and limped my way out. In the washroom, I looked at my entirely miserable mess of an appearance, but hooked my lips into a smile. What does this little bit of humiliation matter? The more Julian despised me, the more he tortured me, the further he pushed Serafina right to my side. I couldn't ask for a better scenario. "Julian, you truly are a spectacular idiot. I will absolutely take away everything that belongs to you. Just wait and see." Coming out of the washroom, I took out the document I was supposed to deliver to Serafina much earlier and gently knocked on her office door. Just like before, I placed the document down and prepared to leave in a hurry. But as I turned around, I accidentally bumped into a chair, which ironically drew Serafina's attention over. "I'm sorry, CEO. I'll leave right now." I bowed, ready to scurry away. Serafina moved fast, grabbing hold of me in one swift motion. "What are you hiding from?" Facing her interrogation, my handsome face flushed beet red. "I wasn't hiding." Serafina narrowed her long, slender eyes, scanning the person in front of her from head to toe. There was unwashed shoe polish on his neck, his forehead was bruised, and the back of his hand was injured. He looked as if he had suffered a massive injustice. "I have eyes, I can see for myself." Saying that, she dragged me straight to the sofa, my entire body completely stiffened. When I finally reacted, I struggled, wanting to run away. The more I dodged like this, the more interesting Serafina found it. She sighed softly, pressed me down firmly on the sofa, pulled out a box of ointment from the drawer next to her, scooped out a little and applied it to my forehead, as well as the back of my hand, and then gently rubbed it in. After this entire series of actions, I looked even more guilty and flushed. "Boss, I really don't have any inappropriate thoughts about you. I just want to do my job well." A man actively telling Serafina that he had no interest in her. I was certainly the first. Serafina's hand, which was applying the band-aid, paused. She couldn't help but feel a little strange inside, but on the surface she couldn't help but laugh out loud. So what? Did I say I was interested in you? You are my subordinate. Showing concern for you is what I should do. Besides, I know this has something to do with Julian. Hearing this sentence, I was stunned for a second, and then my eye sockets instantly turned aggressively red. Serafina was momentarily dumbfounded, not knowing which sentence of hers had triggered me. What a young lad fresh out of college, so prone to feeling wronged at the drop of a hat. Suddenly, a few knocks came from the door, interrupting this weirdly thick atmosphere. I quickly and frantically jumped up from the sofa and bolted out the door as if fleeing for my life. I'm sorry, boss. I'll go to work first. Serafina didn't stop me. She merely watched the direction I ran off to, her expression unreadable. Near the end of the workday, Serafina passed by my cubicle. Someone was calling the desk phone, and coincidentally, I wasn't there at the moment. She walked up to my desk, just about to pick up the phone when her gaze was caught by a photo pinned under the keyboard. It was a yellowed photograph, clearly quite old. Flipping it over, she was shocked to find that the person in the photo was actually herself. Serafina furrowed her brows and sat down in my chair. The computer screen was on, and the chat window just happened to show a conversation between me and my bro. The person on the other side had sent several messages in a row. Rowan, I'm telling you, you better not back down. You finally made it into the new universe group, became Serafina's assistant. If you give up now, what was all your wasted time for? You've liked her for so many years. You tested into Capital University just for her, and you fought your way through countless interviews just to work here for her. You can't just leave without at least confessing to her in the end, right? Serafina wanted to read more, but a pair of hands suddenly darted out from beside her, frantically snatching the keyboard and closing the chat window. Serafina looked at the panicked and flustered me in front of her and waved the photo in her hand. Assistant Rowan, is this what you meant by having no interest in me? My expression instantly drastically changed. Boss, I'm sorry. I know you already have someone you like, so I never had the luxury of hoping you would like me back. That's why, as long as I can stay by your side and just look at you from afar, that's enough. I never expected to get anything in return. I'm so sorry for causing you any trouble. After saying that, I snatched the photo back and fled the scene in absolute panic. Being so sincerely and deeply loved by a young man, even someone as cold as Serafina, couldn't help but feel her heart tremble at this moment. Looking at my retreating back, the emotion in Serafina's eyes quietly grew a fraction deeper. Although that incident was just a small interlude, the relationship between Serafina and me obviously became much closer. For some daily social engagements, she would also bring me along to attend. That day, I noticed her stomach was acting up, so I had prepared stomach medicine early on. Watching her take it made me feel somewhat relieved. During the banquet, some people wanted to toast Serafina. Considering her health, even though my alcohol tolerance was totally average, I bit the bullet and blocked all those drinks for her, one by one. Seeing how fiercely I protected Serafina, the crowd couldn't help but tease her. Your assistant is truly dedicated. He really won't let you touch a single drop of alcohol. Where did you find such a handsome and dashing assistant? It's enough to make a person die of jealousy. There was also someone who was a bit tipsy. While urging me to drink, she started trying to get handsy with me. I say, Bossu, why don't you gift Rowan to me? From now on, the business cooperation between our two companies is guaranteed. Although I dodged backward, looking a bit scared, I didn't entirely drop the polite facade to reject her. Seeing that the rich lady's actions were getting bolder and bolder, even directly grabbing my arm, Serafina's face instantly turned freezing cold. She stood up and grabbed me, her tone laced with heavy displeasure. Enough! Are you here to talk business or are you here to play with men? Seeing Serafina lose her temper, the woman didn't dare to act out of line again, hurriedly downing several glasses of wine in a row to apologize. On the way back, I was a little drunk, slumping against the window. While complaining about the heat, I wildly reached out and unbuttoned my collar, revealing solid abdominal muscles. Serafina's eyes darkened, and she immediately pulled up the partition curtain in the front of the car. The image of the night she walked into the wrong room kept floating in her mind. A wave of hot dryness rose in her chest. Serafina couldn't help but swallow her saliva. She pulled me into her embrace, her gaze slowly inching closer to me. Did you want to leave with that woman just now? I acted incredibly aggrieved. No, Serafina closed the distance between us once again. Why not? Seeing that I wasn't speaking, she pulled my body even tighter against her chest until we were practically pressed completely flush together. Our breaths drew closer and closer. A piercing ringtone shattered the spicy atmosphere. Serafina let me go to answer the phone. She just gently hummed a few times, then instructed the driver to take me home, while she got out of the car herself. After the car drove off, I slowly sat up straight. The person who just called was Julian. I heard his voice through the receiver. For Julian, she would still leave just because of a phone call. It seemed that right now, Serafina was only just interested in me. I needed to set another fire to really get things burning, and I already had an idea. A few days later, Serafina took me on a business trip. As the car passed through an intersection, an out-of-control truck crashed toward our car without any warning. In this hair-raising, split-second moment, I threw myself over Serafina without a second thought. Boss! Serafina looked in sheer disbelief at me, who was shielding her body. She was protected perfectly, but I was bleeding profusely. She only sustained minor injuries, while I was rushed into the operating room in critical condition. When I woke up again, I was already in the hospital. Seeing Serafina appear before me, I immediately and nervously asked about her condition. Boss, are you okay? Are you hurt? Does anything hurt? Looking at me, having just woken up from a coma yet caring so deeply about her safety. It was as if a massive tsunami had erupted in Serafina's heart. This guy loved her to such a terrifying degree. In his heart, her safety was actually more important than his own life. During the days I was hospitalized, Serafina hired a caretaker to look after me. Since I got injured for her sake, after all, she also visited frequently. After staying in the hospital for a few days, I still hadn't taken a shower. That day, I couldn't stand it anymore. Taking advantage of the fact that I could finally get out of bed, I finally took a comfortable, hot shower. However, my right hand was wrapped in bandages. Now, putting on clothes became a massive problem. I stood behind the door, trying again and again to pull up the other half of my shirt, but I just couldn't reach it. Just then, footsteps came from the doorway. I assumed it was the caretaker coming back, and hurriedly called out for help. Bro, thank God you're back. Hurry and help me. The footsteps of the person approached, step by step. When icy fingertips touched my skin, I finally realized something was very wrong. I whipped my head around. The person standing behind me was actually Serafina. I froze, and my face instantly flushed a visible explosive red. A second later, I finally snapped out of it, hurriedly turning my back to her. Boss! Serafina's eyes darkened a few shades. She held my arm to make me turn back around. Then, with one hand, she skillfully helped me put on the shirt properly and buttoned it up. After these actions were done, I scratched my head, mortified. Sorry for the trouble, boss. I can do the rest myself. As soon as the words left my mouth, Serafina directly supported me and slowly walked me toward the hospital bed. I kept my head down, too afraid to look at her, letting the shyness seep right into my bones. The more bashful I was, the deeper the smile on Serafina's lips became. She pulled me to sit on the bed. Rest well. Come back to the company when your body is fully recovered. Saying that, Serafina left. I watched her slender back and smirked coldly. Perhaps the news of my hospitalization, Serafina's multiple visits, had leaked out. The moment I was discharged, Julian came knocking on my door. He threw a custom suit right in front of me, his expression arrogant and sinister. Serafina only has me in her heart. I advise you to give up as early as possible. Didn't you approach her just for the money? I've set up a great sponsor for you. I even prepared the clothes for you. As long as you go meet her, the days of you flying up the social ladder are right around the corner. When that time comes, don't forget to thank me. I put on a deeply wronged face, shaking my head with ultimate grievance. Mr. Julian, you've misunderstood. I'm not that kind of person, and I don't have those kinds of thoughts. I just want to work hard. Please don't force me. Seeing me refuse, Julian's face instantly changed. Don't reject a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. You're going to this blind date whether you want to or not. I'm warning you, if you don't go, tomorrow I will completely ruin your reputation in all of Ocean City. Don't even dream of staying by Serafina's side ever again. Being threatened by him like this, I pretended to be forced against my will and agreed to his demands. After changing clothes, I looked at myself in the mirror. Sure enough, a dashing man of striking appearance, incredibly handsome. I specifically sent a text to the special assistant to ask for leave. Assistant Brooks, I have a blind date tonight that I absolutely cannot decline. It's a banquet at the Marriott. Please accompany CEO Sue in my place. Inside the CEO's office, Serafina looked coolly at Assistant Brooks standing in front of her, her tone carrying an imperceptible layer of rage. You're saying, Rowan is going on a blind date tonight? On the way to the hotels, Serafina's brows were practically knotted into a permanent scowl. The dark clouds gathering on her face would make anyone want to run for the hills. Assistant Brooks had been by Serafina's side for years. He understood better than any that his CEO absolutely could not be provoked right now. The car stopped in front of the hotel. She got out and walked inside. At the crowded hotel entrance, she actually spotted him at first glance. The boy who claimed he was going on a blind date. Right now, I was wearing a perfectly tailored suit, looking so handsome and utterly charming. Every gesture radiated a gentleman's elegance. The rich lady next to me was quite plump and round, but she was clutching my arm, relentlessly pulling me toward the inside of the hotel. Serafina's eyes grew darker and darker. A wave of fury shot straight up to her head. That anger burned brighter and brighter, practically threatening to incinerate her entire being. Even she herself didn't know why she was so incredibly angry. But the moment she thought of me, currently being held by another woman, she was so furious she was about to lose her mind. She strode toward the two of us and snatched me right out of that woman's hands in one swift motion. Follow me. Before I could even react, I was dragged all the way into the elevator. Who the hell are you? What gives you the right to steal my man? Behind us, the rich lady cursed and tried to step forward to stop her, but was easily restrained by Assistant Brooks. The elevator ascended rapidly. The dim lighting highlighted Serafina's breathtaking side profile. She dragged me straight to the presidential suite at the end of the hall and viciously threw me inside. I was smashed onto the bed. Serafina grabbed my chin, her eyes terrifyingly cold. A blind date? How old are you? You're trashing yourself like this just for money. I shook my head nonstop. My wet puppy dog eyes made me look even more pitiful. No, I didn't meet her for the money. Serafina paused, continuing to interrogate. Then what was it for? But I just shook my head aggrievedly. Boss, please don't ask. If Mr. Julian finds out, he'll be angry. Serafina's eyes grew even colder. Did he force you? At the mention of Julian, I acted even more terrified. It has nothing to do with Mr. Julian. Please don't go looking for him, okay? I'll go right now. When I get back, I'll draft my resignation letter. I will never bother Mr. Julian and you ever again. Saying that, I made a move to get up, but before I could even sit up straight, my entire body was grabbed by a pair of pale, clean hands and forcefully yanked back. My whole body ended up pressed right on top of her. I was panic-stricken, hurriedly struggling and squirming, but that only caused the woman beneath me to breathe even heavier. "Boss, let me go. If you do this, Mr. Julian won't let me off." All my words were swallowed by a forceful, domineering kiss. I was kissed so hard I felt like I was suffocating. I feigned shock and struggled, but that only made her kiss me with even more intensity. The next second, a pair of slender hands unapologetically unbuttoned my shirt. At that moment, I smiled internally. The fish took the bait. After a night of spicy horizontal aerobics, the air was filled with the scent of romantic entanglement. Serafina was nestled in my arms. My strong, muscular arms locked her securely in my embrace. What exactly is the relationship between us now? You have a fiancé. What happened between us was just a mistake. This was a topic the two of us couldn't avoid. By the end of my sentence, my voice had even choked up with emotion. You and Mr. Julian are still an engaged couple. Why don't we just forget everything that happened yesterday? Just treat it as a dream. We still have to go back to square one. Don't worry, I won't bother you guys. From the moment she took that step yesterday, Serafina knew in her heart that an arrow shot from the bow cannot be returned. She definitely couldn't really let me bear everything alone. She gently stroked my cheek, saying firmly, "I will handle Julian's situation. I will cancel the engagement. I will absolutely not let you suffer any more grievances." Serafina spoke with a hint of heartache. "You've suffered a lot during this time." Serafina understood in her heart that Julian's personality and temper had always been bad, and because of my soft personality, I must have swallowed my pride and compromised many times in front of him. Serafina was not going to let Julian off the hook. I hugged her tightly, acting deeply moved. "It doesn't matter. As long as I have you, I won't feel wronged." Serafina couldn't help but feel her heart soften. Like coaxing a small child, she comfortingly patted my back. After the two of us got dressed and ready, we walked out of the presidential suite, only to run right into Julian, whose eyes were bloodshot red. If it weren't for the several bodyguards beside Julian holding him back, he probably would have lunged at me like a rabid dog. "You bastard! Are you that thirsty? Are you that desperate for a woman?" Julian struggled wildly forward, looking like he wanted nothing more than to beat me black and blue. "Serafina! Tell them to let me go. Did this man force you? He drugged you, didn't he? I'm going to ruin his reputation. I'm going to make him completely disappear from this world." Julian, consumed by rage, babbled incoherently in his panic, screaming and throwing a tantrum with zero regard for his image. Fortunately, this was the presidential suite. There were only 2 rooms on this floor. One belonged exclusively to Serafina, and the other was empty. No matter how much of a fuss Julian made, it ultimately wouldn't attract a crowd of onlookers. Those bodyguards were all arranged by Assistant Brooks. They were all trained professionals. Holding back a pampered young master like Julian was truly a piece of cake. I followed closely behind Serafina. My cautious, timid demeanor truly made her heart ache. Compared to Julian's screaming and howling, the difference was instantly clear. Serafina impatiently said to Julian, "Mr. Julian, stop throwing a tantrum. Regarding the marriage alliance between the G family and the Su family, I need to reconsider. Your current behavior truly makes you unsuitable to be the son-in-law of the Su family. As for breaking off the engagement, I will have someone arrange it properly." Serafina's brief few sentences directly caused Julian to completely break down. However, what made him break down even more was that, as I stood behind Serafina, I casually adjusted my collar, revealing the highly suspicious red marks on my neck and collarbone. It was enough to show just how wild the two of us had been last night. Julian was going insane with jealousy. "No, we cannot break off the engagement. Serafina, you are mine. You will always belong to me alone," he cried until his tears ran dry but didn't get a single sympathetic glance from Serafina. Instead, there was only overflowing impatience. Julian shrieked, "It's him! It's all because he's driving a wedge between us. If only he didn't exist, everything would be fine." He wore a sinister expression, hating that he couldn't slice me into 1,000 pieces. His glare alone looked like he wanted to murder me 100 times over. But no matter how much he struggled, he couldn't escape the iron grip of the bodyguards. Julian was on the brink of despair. He watched as I held onto Serafina, walking right past him without leaving him a single glance. He screamed in utter breakdown, so loud that practically the entire floor could hear it clearly. Hearing this sound, a streak of pure vindication flashed through my heart. "Julian, so you also have days of such total breakdown and despair. The pain you are suffering right now is not even half of the pain my sister once endured. Everything you have done, you will have to pay back, bit by bit." I went to the mall with Serafina. Serafina picked out plenty of clothes and jewelry for me, truly acting incredibly attentive. I'm not stupid. Naturally, I wouldn't speak up to plead for Julian at a time like this. Going overboard would backfire. Being too deliberate would easily let Serafina figure things out. For many things, it was naturally better for Serafina to investigate them herself. The impact would be much greater. I enjoyed Serafina picking out clothes for me, and like a little kid, whenever I put on a nice outfit, I would run to my parent to show off. Seeing the many different styles of me, Serafina felt incredibly satisfied inside. Such a beautiful person belonged to her. She temporarily forgot everything regarding Julian. In the past, Serafina merely thought Julian was just a bit arrogant and willful, loved to be jealous and petty, but it was fundamentally harmless. But now she finally realized that Julian was never that simple. Previously, Serafina had also hired a few capable male assistants. The secretarial office wasn't just a one-person show, nor was it serving her exclusively. In her eyes, as long as they had ability, gender simply didn't matter. But Julian was different. He was incredibly suspicious. Any male creature that appeared near Serafina had to endure his bullying and humiliation. The several male assistants before me were all driven away like that. I was considered the male who had managed to stick around the longest. In the past, Serafina didn't care about these things. Naturally, she just treated Julian's behavior as minor squabbles, thinking it was harmless. But once Serafina became suspicious, many deliberately hidden truths would inevitably surface. I believed that Serafina would absolutely never fall in love with a man like that. Sure enough, with my intentional and unintentional hints, Julian's past actions couldn't withstand any real investigation. The news that the Su family intended to break off the engagement spread like wildfire. The G family, which had previously risen in status because of the Su family, now had to gradually return to its original position. Without the identity of the Su family matriarch's fiancé, Julian could never act as recklessly as before. He was truly terrified now. The banquet to annul the engagement between Serafina and Julian invited many people to witness it. However, the male lead of the banquet was locked up by the G family. Julian stubbornly refused to open his mouth to agree to break off the engagement with Serafina, but the Su family had already negotiated properly with the G family. The G family felt humiliated, but had no way to fight back. There was no helping it. The G family couldn't compare to the Su family, and even had to rely on the Su family for better development. Originally an ironclad marriage, the G family even had the potential to climb to a higher level through this union. But now it was great. The marriage was blown. They didn't get a single scrap of benefit. Seeing Julian, the G family was also furious that iron couldn't become steel. They had told Julian more than once about his spoiled personality, telling him not to have such strong possessiveness, and not to hold on to a woman like Serafina so tightly. In business, one would always encounter various male clients. If even talking normally with men wasn't allowed, who knows how many business deals the Su family would ruin. But Julian never listened. Even though he was locked up right now, Julian was still restless. Going on a hunger strike, attempting to fake harm himself, he used every trick in the book, just to get out of the house, and tell everyone that he wasn't canceling the engagement. But the people sent to guard Julian were professionals. They gave Julian absolutely zero opportunity to harm himself. Even if he wanted to go on a hunger strike, someone would regularly give him nutrient injections and pump him full of glucose. Standing by the window, Julian could vaguely hear the polite voices of Serafina's and Father G. He heard them say, the marriage alliance between the two families was peacefully dissolved, but the business cooperation between the companies would continue as usual. Peacefully dissolved. Julian's fingers gripped the window ledge tightly, his eyes glaring so hard they turned red. Serafina, I do not agree to our engagement being dissolved. I will never let you be with that toy boy. In your dreams! He saw me standing beside Serafina, looking incredibly intimate with her, and was so angry he wanted to jump off the building to tear us two apart. Watching Serafina take back the engagement ring they shared, Julian couldn't stay still for another second. Ignoring the people trying to stop him, he attempted to take a leap, jumping down the building to stop this annulment banquet. But halfway through the jump, Julian's clothes got snagged on something, stubbornly refusing to rip loose. Julian's room was on the 3rd floor. Looking down from up there, it was still a little bit high. With his impulsive action thwarted, he immediately lost all his previous courage. Julian stood on the window ledge, unable to go up, unable to go down. Hurry up and save me down from here. Do you not have eyes? He desperately clung to the curtain he could reach, refusing to let go. His tears had already started pouring out. However, the bodyguard standing nearby looked completely indifferent. He merely used a strip of cloth to securely tie Julian's hands. The other end of the cloth was held firmly in his hand. The bodyguard ensured Julian wouldn't fall, but temporarily didn't pull him up either. For a moment, Julian trembled in fear like a leaf in the wind, begging for mercy non-stop. He could even feel the voices of the people attending the banquet downstairs discussing him. They must be laughing at him, right? Julian hardened his heart, yanked the cloth hard, and vaulted back into the room. The feeling of having his feet on solid ground again, he couldn't even describe how wonderful it felt. Julian suddenly really cherished his life and stopped making a fuss about wanting to jump. The male lead of the annulment banquet not showing up didn't affect the outcome at all. Almost no one present paid any attention to Julian. I was the only one constantly keeping an eye on the room Julian was in, and naturally saw Julian almost jump out the window. How could I possibly allow Julian to jump out the window at this critical moment? If he actually successfully jumped, this engagement probably wouldn't be annulled today. It might even ruin all my hard work over these past days. Fortunately, I had spoken to the bodyguard beforehand. No matter what happened, he must absolutely ensure Julian's life was safe. Serafina actually thought I was just being too kind-hearted. Even at a time like this, I was still worrying about Julian's safety. Instantly, her dislike for Julian increased by a few more notches. Julian had always been reckless and impulsive, even loving her to the point of madness. That kind of love even made Serafina feel suffocated. However, considering the two had known each other for so many years, Serafina also didn't want Julian to get hurt. I knew that my weight in Serafina's heart still wasn't heavy enough. Although it surpassed Julian's, it wasn't enough. I also wanted Julian to taste that feeling. The feeling of having your life out of your own control, begging for mercy in 100 ways, yet remaining desperately helpless. After the banquet ended, the news of the Su family and G family canceling the engagement spread rapidly. Julian's treatment was vastly inferior to before. The G family had more than just Julian as a child. Someone who had been dumped by Serafina no longer had any exploitation value. Consequently, even some of the servants weren't as attentive to him anymore. Some of the young masters, who had previously been bullied by Julian, now gathered around to plot against him. For a while, Julian actually didn't have the Tomito come bother me and Serafina as we cultivated our relationship, so Serafina and I got along extremely harmoniously. We went to and from work together, occasionally chatting in the office, sharing our moods. After work, we went out to have fun together and embraced each other to sleep at night. Serafina had never felt so relaxed and free. Every day spent with me was happy, with no endless arguing or flying jealousy. Serafina's normally furrowed brows rarely relaxed this much. Many people in the company could notice that the boss's mood was obviously fantastic. However, a message popped up, and Serafina's brows instantly knitted together again. "I'm back in the country." A person named Cassiana sent this single sentence in Serafina's close friends group chat. It instantly caused a massive ripple effect. Message after message popped up, all welcoming Cassian back. They even arranged to go out for dinner together that night. Seeing Serafina hadn't replied for a long time, someone bold even tagged her. Serafina's finger hovered over the typing interface for a long while, before finally slowly typing out a single word. "Okay." Serafina was leaning against my chest. I naturally saw all the message contents. "Come with me tonight." Serafina's fingertip tapped lightly on my chest, her expression unreadable. I nodded and said, "Okay." I didn't ask who Cassian was, but I keenly sensed that this Cassian was definitely a key figure. Listening to the name, she was probably from the G family. It's just that I didn't know why there was absolutely no news about her regarding the G family. Julian also almost never mentioned this name. I didn't know exactly what my sister discovered back then, the secret related to Julian. My intuition told me this Cassian probably had something to do with that incident. That night, inside a private booth at the moonlit night bar, the moment Serafina walked through the door with her arm linked through mine, the private room instantly went dead silent. My boyfriend, Rowan. She introduced me simply. I nodded politely, my gaze sweeping around the room. Those who could hang out with Serafina were naturally the favored daughters of high society. Having been by Serafina's side for this long, I more or less recognized quite a few of them. Finally, my gaze locked onto one person. That person was wearing haute couture clothing. Her appearance wasn't considered particularly outstanding among this group, but the ethereal aura surrounding her inexplicably separated her from the people around her. I figured she must be Cassian. I was led by Serafina to take a seat. Everyone present was shrewd naturally. They wouldn't say anything unpleasing. Their attitude in welcoming me was extremely sincere. Julian's personality was truly disliked by many people. In the past, when Serafina was engaged to him, they couldn't easily say bad things. Now things were different. I treated people with generosity and appropriate manners. Even if I couldn't cater to everyone perfectly, at least I looked decent enough. With a few lively folks warming up the atmosphere, the private room became lively again shortly after. Suddenly, Cassian blurted out a sentence. "I heard you and Julian canceled your engagement. Switching to this current one, your taste doesn't seem to have improved much." Cassian's tone was flat and emotionless, making it impossible for anyone to guess what she was actually thinking. "Doesn't this perfectly pave the way for you and Julian?" Serafina's single sentence completely silenced the entire rooms once again. Many people even held their breath, ready at a moment's notice to pull these two apart. Hearing Serafina's previous sentence, Cassian suddenly laughed. "But a man like him, only you would ever have the eyes for him." Her tone couldn't hide her disgust and nausea. I didn't say a word, but my eyes kept observing Cassian, trying to glean more information from their conversation. Unfortunately, the two of them merely touched upon the topic, said those few sentences, and then stopped. Seeing me constantly staring at Cassian, a faint wave of jealousy bubbled up in Serafina's heart. One of her hands gripped my waist, while the other handed a glass of pink liquid to me. "Try it. The alcohol content isn't high, don't worry," Serafina whispered by my ear. I shot Serafina a slightly playful glare, then, using Serafina's hand, slowly took a small sip. Entering my mouth, it felt like sparkling water, with only a very faint taste of alcohol. Sweet and sour, the taste was actually quite nice. The alcohol content wasn't that high, but I felt as if I was completely hammered. My face turned completely red, and my body started to heat up. I felt my body turn soft and mushy, unable to muster any strength. I felt lightheaded, and even a strange itch began to spread from deep within my body. I immediately realized I had been drugged with some suspicious potion. Leaning against Serafina's embrace, I bit down hard on the tip of my tongue, trying my best to stay conscious. "Serafina, I've been drugged. Take me away." I practically used just my breath to speak to Serafina. Fortunately, Serafina caught the anomaly in time. She supported me up immediately, rushing out at top speed. Right before exiting, she dropped one last sentence. "Nobody touch anything inside." Leaning on Serafina's shoulder, my hands uncontrollably tore at my own clothes. But to maintain my sanity, I fought hard to bite my lip, biting down so hard it almost bled. My fingertips also forced themselves to dig into my palms. "Rowan." Serafina called my name over and over again, trying to keep me awake. I kept writhing against her body, and she wasn't having an easy time either. But not knowing exactly what kind of cursed spicy juice I had drunk, the most urgent priority was getting me to the hospital. The unfinished glass of alcohol in the private room was also hurriedly sent for testing by Assistant Brooks. Looking at me sweating profusely beside her, Serafina had never felt the road to the hospital was this agonizingly long. So many times she almost wanted to tell the driver to pull over. Thankfully, we arrived at the hospital, and the test results came out very quickly. Serafina looked at the glaring words on the test report. "Highly potent romance-inducing substance." Her face darkened to the absolute extreme. "Investigate! Investigate this immediately!" I want to know exactly who did this. I will never let them off. Receiving the order, Assistant Brooks immediately went to arrange for people to investigate. Serafina looked at me sleeping peacefully, hating that she couldn't drag the mastermind out and chop them into a million pieces. If my willpower had been just a little weaker, it was highly likely I would have put on a striptease right there in the private room. Just thinking about that possibility made Serafina explode with rage. Who would be the person who hated Rowan the most? Serafina instantly arrived at an answer. Julian. Right at this moment, Assistant Brooks also brought over the investigation results. Looking at the person in the photo, Serafina wasn't surprised in the slightest. Julian was only capable of using these underhanded, sleazy tactics. It was nothing more than trying to ruin someone's reputation. He bought the substance from the black market. Seeing that he couldn't command his former lackeys anymore, in his desperation he had to do it himself. Hearing that Serafina and her group were coming to Moonlit Night to hang out, Julian immediately disguised himself, sneaking into the ranks of the waiters. Moonlit Night Bar also had shares belonging to Julian, so naturally, they could only let him do as he pleased. Julian originally wanted to spike Serafina's glass, then find an opportunity to have a spicy horizontal tango with her, because Serafina had her own exclusive glass every time she came here. But when he saw Serafina personally selecting and mixing a drink for me, he could no longer control the jealousy in his heart. He dissolved a double dose of the potion into the liquid, watching with his own eyes as I drank it down, waiting for it to take effect. But Julian underestimated my self-control. I didn't immediately lose my mind and strip off my clothes on the spot as he predicted, but instead gritted my teeth and held on desperately. Looking at Julian's actions, Serafina was so angry she slammed the evidence down on the table. She directly ordered people to tie Julian up, locking him in an empty room. Then, she had him force-fed the exact same double-dose potion I had drunk, leaving him in there to fend for himself. The potion entered his throat and quickly took effect. Julian himself was never someone with strong self-control. In no time at all, he had stripped himself entirely naked. He even kept writhing around non-stop in the room. However, there wasn't a single person around. 5 hours later, someone brought Julian out and injected him with an antidote. Julian was entirely filthy and drenched in sweat. His lips were completely pale, even chapped and peeling from dryness. He looked nothing like his former arrogant self. Serafina's methods were considered relatively lenient. At least she didn't throw him into a crowd of people, but she initiated a stern warning to the G family. Uncle G, if you can't discipline your son properly, then don't blame me for not being polite. I do not want to see something like this happen ever again. Serafina slammed all this evidence right in front of Father G. Father G's old face flushed bright red, feeling as if he had lost every last ounce of face. Yes, Julian is ignorant. I will discipline him properly. The one feeling humiliated wasn't just Father G, but also Julian. When he woke up, he found that the doors and windows of his room had been locked. The windows were even fitted with heavy anti-theft grills. His phone, computer, tablet, and all electronic devices had been confiscated. Only a basic phone that could merely send texts was left for him. He lay on the bed with vacant eyes, feeling a burning, spicy pain all over his body, especially his pride. Julian felt his dignity had been completely tossed into the gutter. In that completely empty room, he didn't know how many times he had begged, even kneeling and kowtowing repeatedly. But still, no one came to rescue him. Julian never expected that Serafina could be so ruthless to him, and the more it was like this, the more he envied and hated me. Why didn't Rowan have to do anything? Just by pretending to be wronged, he could steal away everything that belonged to him. Obviously, in the past, all this unique exclusive favoritism was given solely to him. Julian hated me so much his teeth itched. He didn't know how long he was locked up. By the time he was finally let out again and appeared in front of people, he had become a lot more well-behaved. It's just that those eyes were incredibly gloomy, making people feel like they'd have nightmares just from a single glance. At this time, I had already officially met Serafina's parents. At a banquet, when Julian saw the string of Buddhist prayer beads on my wrist, the gloominess in his eyes became even more pronounced. He silently stalked behind me and Serafina, his eyes barely even blinking, staring dead straight at that string of beads. Sensing a certain someone's stare, I deliberately shook my wrist, accidentally, and then intertwined my fingers with Serafina's. The sturdy wrist and the prayer beads complemented each other perfectly. Julian glared so hard his eyeballs were about to fall out. Just a little bit more. Julian hadn't suffered enough yet. The intimate interaction between Serafina and me deeply pierced Julian's eyes. He fled the banquet in a frantic panic, and accidentally, at a corner, bumped into someone he really didn't want to see. Why are you running so fast? Cassian's tone was gentle, but Julian rapidly developed several layers of goosebumps. Nothing! Julian quickly dodged Cassian's outstretched hand and scrambled away blindly. However, I observed all of this. Julian was afraid of Cassian. This realization surprised me quite a bit. From Serafina, I learned that Cassian was merely an adopted child of the G family. Originally, she wasn't highly valued, treated much like keeping a little cat or dog. But Cassian worked hard and had outstanding abilities. In the past, she was Julian's lackey, and through that, she got to know Serafina. However, this lackey was no ordinary lackey. From the day Cassian was adopted into the G family, she possessed immense ambition. She didn't want to just be a dog to the G family's eldest young master. So, she enabled Julian's atrocious personality, allowing Julian to commit all sorts of evil acts, even praising his every move, while also cleaning up Julian's messes behind the scenes. If the former Julian was merely demanding and fiercely possessive, then the Julian taught by Cassian was both stupid and downright evil, pure, unadulterated malice. My sister, Elara, was not the first to meet her end at Julian's hands, nor would she be the last. I had only investigated these relatively superficial matters, but couldn't find any concrete evidence. The clues completely cut off when they reached Cassian. Why did Cassian go abroad? Why did the relationship between Cassian and Julian suddenly become so bad? Why was Julian even terrified of Cassian? I couldn't figure it out. But when I wanted to investigate deeper, I was stopped by Serafina. Rowan, regarding your sister's matter, stop investigating further. Listen to me. Serafina suddenly blurting out this sentence completely shattered all my disguises. It turned out Serafina had long since investigated my past and generally understood my true motive for approaching her. Suddenly, I didn't know how to control my facial expression anymore. Should I be angry or should I feel guilty? I knew this day would come sooner or later, and I had mentally prepared myself for it long ago. I just didn't expect this day to come so fast. Serafina hugged me tightly. Her expression didn't hold much blame. Instead, it was mostly filled with heartache. I will help you get revenge, but not right now, okay? I was almost moved by Serafina just a second ago. But hearing that last sentence, my heart completely sank to the bottom of the icy valley. I pulled away from Serafina's embrace. My expression was cold and distant. The way I looked at Serafina even carried a hint of scrutiny. For once, Serafina's eyes actually dodged mine. She remained silent for a moment. Indeed, in her view, although Julian was both stupid and bad, many things were done under Cassian's instigation, even the death of my sister. Julian had indeed done many terrible things to me, but she had also paid him back for every single one. Julian was just bad, but not to the point where he deserved to die. I will help you take revenge. I will help you torture him, but he is not worth dirtying your hands. The person you truly should exact revenge upon is Cassian. A sarcastic arc curled at the corner of my mouth. I tilted my chin up, signaling for Serafina to clearly explain the reason for taking revenge on Cassian. Serafina took out a stack of documents, presenting them right in front of me. Then, in a few simple sentences, she recounted the past between Cassian and Julian. In the eyes of the vast majority of people in the past, Cassian admired Julian. That was why she was so endlessly tolerant of him. Everyone thought Cassian, hindered by her status as an adopted daughter, had no choice but to hand Julian over to Serafina. Actually, Serafina's feelings for Julian hadn't reached the level of true love. Before she felt that Nyon could sit in the position of her husband, there wasn't much difference. It was just that Julian would also help chase away the annoying men around Serafina. Julian was a deeply jealous person and always acted on impulse, without the slightest regard for consequences. Back then, Julian had also bought a romance potion from the black market, preparing to make a move on Serafina. But unsure if the potion would work, he fed a portion of it to Cassian. At that time, my sister, Elara, was working at the G family's estate. As luck would have it, she stumbled upon that highly inappropriate scene. To prevent Elara from blabbing about it, Julian caught her off guard and knocked her out with a shovel from the greenhouse. Later, when Cassian woke up, she felt incomparably disgusted, hating that she couldn't peel off her own skin and replace it. She didn't want this matter to leak out, so she instigated Julian to hire someone to silence her permanently. Julian was an idiot. He was too panicky and left behind a trail of clues. He failed to silence her and was instead discovered by Father G. So, Father G demanded Cassian be sent abroad overnight. Cassian agreed to go abroad, but forced Julian to witness her subordinates literally beating Elara until her soul left her body, completely ignoring Elara's desperate begging and promises. Previously, Julian had only followed Cassian's instigation, letting his underlings dispose of people he found annoying. This was the very first time he witnessed with his own eyes a person being fatally dealt with right in front of him. Afterward, Cassian had someone throw Elara's body into the ocean, destroying all the evidence completely. I had only managed to piece together the gist of it from the G family servants. When I asked again later, the G family servants refused to open their mouths anymore. I also didn't have any concrete evidence. With just my own strength, I absolutely could not bring down a massive mountain like the G family. Learning this truth, I didn't feel a single trace of excitement at uncovering the facts. Instead, I was filled with overwhelming powerlessness. How pitiful was my sister. She merely accidentally saw something she shouldn't have seen and had to pay the ultimate price. I hugged Serafina tightly, my face already streaming with tears, sobbing uncontrollably. My eyes were full of hatred, yet I didn't know how to vent it. Serafina held me tightly, trying to give me the strength to keep going. Julian and Cassian are neither of them any good, but you cannot deal with them yourself. You still have a future. You cannot dirty your own hands. Let me do it. I will handle it properly. Don't worry. Serafina stated her true inner thoughts word by word, but I felt somewhat hesitant. I didn't know if I should trust Serafina. The woman in front of me, just like Julian, came from a privileged background. The education they received was pretty much the same. I didn't dare to gamble on whether Serafina would firmly stand on my side, because the relationship between the two of us, from the very beginning, was something I obtained through scheming. I just wanted to see Julian lose everything he cared about, but I never expected that I would actually be the first to lose my heart to Serafina. Serafina was so outstanding, but I couldn't allow myself to drown in it. I remained clear-headed and rational. Resting my chin on Serafina's shoulder, I nodded obediently, as if I was going to follow her instructions. But in reality, I thought nothing of the sort. I truly didn't have the power to bring down the G family, but I still wanted to do something for my sister. After reaching a simple consensus, my life temporarily returned to peace. Serafina started suppressing the G family. More accurately, she was suppressing the lineage of Cassian and Julian. The G Corporation was jointly managed by 3 branches: Father G's eldest brother, Father G, and Father G's younger brother. It's just that the 3 branches managed different directions. The G Corporation had always been plagued by internal infighting. Father G only had 1 biological child, Julian. Because of this, he adopted Cassian. Fortunately, Cassian was ambitious. After returning to the country, she took up an important position in the G Corporation. If Serafina wanted to take revenge on Cassian and Julian, she naturally had to completely strip them of their proudest asset, their source of income. Ultimately, Cassian couldn't compete with Serafina, who had battled in the business world for years. Beset by troubles internally and externally, Cassian suffered repeated setbacks. Even Father G suffered suppression alongside her. With Father G and Cassian losing ground in the company, Julian's life naturally became much worse than before. His consumption level had dropped drastically time and time again. Julian hadn't bought new luxury brand clothes in ages. Instead, he had to pick relatively cheaper, affordable luxury items to wear. Coincidentally, at this exact time, I ran into Julian at the mall. I earned a high salary and had the black card Serafina gave me. I bought things without even looking at the price tags. Seeing me so glamorous and radiant, and then looking down at the ordinary, tacky, affordable luxury clothes on his own body, Julian instantly exploded with anger. Rowan! Even if a pheasant disguises itself as a phoenix, there will ultimately come a day when it's exposed. Don't think that just because you're spending Serafina's money, you can rest easy. Men like you, Serafina has seen plenty of them. Who knows, maybe she'll dump you tomorrow. Serafina only has me in her heart. You shouldn't waste your effort. You better save the money you have in your hands. Don't end up not even being able to afford a meal tomorrow. Julian blocked my path, firing off sentence after sentence without pausing for breath. He looked like he wanted to rip these high-status clothes right off my body. However, I wasn't angered by Julian in the slightest. I merely gave a flat, and then unhesitatingly swiped Serafina's black card. The moment the payment successful sound rang out, Julian's face turned pitch black. What gives you the right to spend Serafina's money? You really are just a vain gold-digging toy boy. I casually raised an eyebrow. So what? Are you throwing a tantrum here because you can't spend Serafina's money? But I'm her boyfriend. With just 2 simple sentences, I completely turned Julian's face red and green with fury. He wanted to say something to fight back, but what I said was the absolute truth. Julian didn't have a job, and the allowance the G family gave him now had been massively slashed. He could no longer spend money recklessly, and all of this, everything, was caused by me. If it weren't for me, Serafina would still be his fiancée. She would still spoil him unconditionally and treat him well. The more Julian thought about it, the angrier he got. The way he looked at me was full of deep resentment. He stormed off furiously, but immediately ran straight to find Cassian. Cassian was busy with company matters. Seeing this useless idiot Julian, Cassian's eyes darkened, but she still opened her mouth with a good temper to start the conversation. What's wrong? Why so angry? Although Cassian asked this, her eyes never strayed from the documents in her hands for a single second. Julian hesitated for a long time. Cassian, I want Rowan to disappear forever. Hearing this sentence, Cassian's pen paused for a moment. On her originally emotionless face, a trace of unnoticeable coldness instantly flashed by. Oh, and how do you plan to do that?
Asking Julian this question.
He had absolutely no idea what to do. In the past, there were so many people happy to listen to his orders. If he didn't want to see someone, he just had to say a word, issue a command, and it was done. But now, he didn't know where to start. Sister, help me! Julian grabbed Cassian's hand and spoke seriously. Those eyes held undisguisable malice. That feeling of nausea surged up once again. Cassian didn't even know how she managed to maintain her fake mask. She discreetly pulled her hand away. How about this? I'll give you a contact number. You spend some money, and have the other party handle the matter for you. Getting this sentence from Cassian, Julian was instantly satisfied. He no longer cared about Cassian's expression, and happily left Cassian's office. After Julian left, Cassian immediately ordered people to thoroughly clean and sanitize the entire office from top to bottom. I knew Julian went to find Cassian, and I roughly knew what was up in my heart. It was nothing more than wanting to harm me. This time, I planned to give Julian a chance. Otherwise, given Serafina's methods of protecting me, the person Julian found might not actually even be able to get close to me. A few days later was a holiday. Serafina and I planned to go back and visit her parents. As soon as I got off work, I went to the mall to pick out suitable gifts for Father Sue and Mother Sue. Serafina was busy with work, and I didn't want to bother her. Although an assistant could also buy these things, it was the thought that counted after all. I wanted to treat it seriously. After figuring out my route, Julian gritted his teeth and ruthlessly sold off several of his luxury watches, just to barely cover the quote from that shady hitman. Looking at his empty display cabinet, Julian felt his heart bleeding. The hitman was extremely dedicated to his job. Finding the right opportunity, he kidnapped me. But Julian didn't want me to perish that quickly. He wanted Serafina to witness with her own eyes as I lost innocence, messing around with other women. Looking at my handsome and dashing face, and combining it with my surname, Julian finally remembered a certain person, and that was Alara. Alara wasn't bad-looking either. It's just that she was timid, a bit clumsy, and didn't know how to adapt. She was just a gardener hired by the G family who occasionally also did some heavy lifting. But it was this remarkably unremarkable woman who had witnessed with her own eyes the inappropriate scene between him and Cassian. That incident had always been Julian's ultimate humiliation. Moreover, Alara was the first person to be fatally dealt with right in front of him. Facing this somewhat familiar face, Julian suddenly birthed a wave of infinite panic. Actually, I had already woken up long ago and had made preparations in advance to use myself as bait. The moment I was drugged and knocked out, I pressed the emergency SOS shortcut on my phone. At the same time, the location of my distress was sent directly to Serafina. I was undeniably gambling with my own life, but I didn't regret it in the slightest. I had people secretly keeping an eye on Cassian and Julian for a long time. The contact information Cassian gave Julian wasn't for some reliable professional hitman at all. That person was just a minor lackey who worked under Cassian when she was abroad. He already had a terminal illness. This time, it was just to secure a worry-free rest of his life for his wife and child. But Julian was stupid. He possessed a deeply ingrained trust in Cassian. Half of the money the hitman scammed out of Julian went into the hitman's pocket, and the other half went into Cassian's pocket. Julian just had no idea. Cassian did this on purpose. She just wanted Julian to act like an idiot, preferably doing something irreversible, and then get sent to prison. In the past, her hands had been stained with so much dirt. She needed to find a scapegoat to take the fall, and Julian was the undisputed perfect candidate. He was both stupid and evil, ruthless to the extreme, treating human life like absolute dirt. He never treated ordinary people as human beings. The Cassian of the past was also just one of them. She was just relatively lucky to have been chosen as Julian's lackey. But now, all of this should finally come to an end. Julian ordered someone to set up a video camera, pointing it squarely at me, and even ordered the hitman to strip off my clothes. The hitman had his own wife and son, and had no desire to do such things. He just wanted to finish the job early, and then go meet his maker. All right already. If you want to end him, then just be quick about it. What's the point of this whole circus? Are you doing this or not? The hitman said impatiently. Wasting all this time. Who knows, the rescue team might already be on their way. And you're still here dawdling. What are you rushing for? I paid the money. What I say goes. Julian pulled out the leftover potion from his pocket. Pointing at my chin, he slapped my face, trying to wake me up. I slowly opened my eyes, deliberately pretending to be confused, surveying my surroundings. My hands and feet were tied, my mouth was gagged. A trace of panic flashed across my face. Let me go. Seeing my pitiful appearance, Julian instantly became furious. Is this the look you used to seduce Serafina? Julian's nails scraped across my cheek, leaving behind several glaring red marks. As long as I ruin this face of yours, as long as I ruin you, Serafina will go back to how she used to be. Oh right, didn't you really want to know how your sister actually died? Speaking up to this point, as if thinking of something joyful, Julian continued, let me tell you, your sister, Alara, met her end right in front of my very eyes. She was even kneeling on the floor, wagging her tail and begging for pity like a dog. She abandoned all her dignity, kowtowing to me so many times your forehead broke open. Did you know? At that time, she even said she still had a younger brother. She couldn't die. She couldn't let anything happen to her. She said she absolutely wouldn't tell anyone about what happened that day. But so what? If you see something you shouldn't see, you deserve to be gone. Julian articulated word by word, as if describing something incredibly happy. I struggled with all my might, but the ropes tying my hands and feet only got tighter and tighter. I let out muffled roars of rage like a furious lion. Even though I already roughly knew the truth from back then, hearing Julian recount it with his own mouth again, I still couldn't control the hatred erupting inside me. But the more this happened, the calmer my mind became. I had waited a very long time for this opportunity. I couldn't give up. On the surface, I struggled furiously, but my hands were constantly sending messages to the police. I didn't entirely trust Serafina. Therefore, I also called the cops. I had an inconspicuous ring on my hand, but hidden inside the ring was a micro-tracker and a camera. When I was knocked out, I flicked a leaf on the ring, pressing the hidden button. Now everything was being recorded by me. My life had to be in my own hands to truly safe. Meanwhile, Serafina, who was originally working, saw a phone call that only rang for a few seconds, and an emergency contact notification text. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. An extremely ominous premonition rose within her. Quickly! Have someone find out exactly where Rowan is right now? Serafina's subordinates instantly flew into a busy frenzy. She immediately dialed Cassian's number. Where is Rowan? Serafina's tone was so cold it could freeze someone to death. However, the person on the other end of the line acted as if she didn't feel it at all. He's your boyfriend. How would I know? Serafina also generally realized that she couldn't find a breakthrough with Cassian, but this matter definitely had everything to do with Cassian and Julian. Those two couldn't escape involvement. 10 minutes later, Serafina's people tracked down my whereabouts. At the same time, the police also received the location and the distress signal. Very soon, the two groups arrived one after another at the abandoned warehouse where we were. Julian's potion hadn't even had the chance to be fed to me, yet before they were discovered by these people. Perhaps afraid that his mission wouldn't be completed, and he wouldn't get the rest of the money, the hitman moved at top speed, pulling a rope from his body and tying Julian up as well. Don't come any closer! Nobody move! They are both in my hands. If you come over here, their lives will be forfeit! The hitman threw Julian at my feet, stepping on Julian with one foot. The weapon in his hand shifted back and forth between Julian and me. Perhaps realizing this wasn't secure enough, he held the weapon pointed at Julian with one hand, while holding a sharp dagger with the other, pressing it against my neck. The icy blade pierced the skin, oozing thin trails of blood. The police and Serafina's people didn't dare to act rashly. Just at this moment, Julian screamed from the floor. "Are you crazy? I hired you to end Rowan, not to end me. Hurry up and let me go." The hitman looked coldly at Julian howling on the floor, feeling a wave of intense irritation. If it weren't for this idiot Julian, maybe Rowan would already be done for by his hands. It would all be over. He impatiently kicked Julian. But right at this moment, Serafina's people silently crept closer to the hitman. "I told you not to come any closer. The weapon in my hand isn't just for show." The hitman fired a shot into the ground next to Julian, which scared Julian half to death. However, even though I heard the gunshot, I could only force myself to control my body. I couldn't be nervous. Otherwise, all previous efforts would be wasted. There was still a dagger pressed against my neck. The slightest lack of attention, I could lose my life. I stared at the dagger, my eyelashes trembling nonstop from nervousness. "How about this? Let's play a game." Saying that, the hitman cocked his weapon and looked at Serafina with great interest. He recognized Serafina and had heard about the entanglements between her, Julian, and me. "Serafina, why don't you choose one person between the two of them? Whoever you choose, I will let go. The other person has to die. How about it? Is this game interesting? If you don't choose, then I'll just end them both." The hitman handed the right to choose over to Serafina. On one side was the childhood friend she had known since she was little, and on the other was her current boyfriend. It seemed like no matter which side she chose, it would be a very difficult dilemma. I closed my eyes in fear, crystal tears falling down like broken strings of pearls, one by one. Anyone who saw me looking like this would feel incredibly heartbroken for me. My mouth was gagged, I couldn't speak, nor could I fight for my own chance to survive. However, Julian on the floor was different. He was only tied by his hands and feet. His mouth was perfectly fine. He cried and yelled in Serafina's direction. "Serafina, I know I was wrong. I won't be willful anymore. Whatever you say goes. Save me, please? I don't want to die. I won't be jealous anymore, and I won't stop you from finding other men. Whatever kind of man you want, I'll even help you find them. Please save me." In order to survive, Julian was practically spouting utter nonsense. The words coming out of his mouth made even Serafina instinctively want to frown upon hearing them. Seeing Serafina delaying her answer, the hitman grew extremely impatient. The dagger in his hand patted my handsome face. "What's wrong, can't choose? Then I'll choose for you. How about you both die together?" Suddenly 2 gunshots rang out almost simultaneously. But then it was discovered that I, who was originally tied to the chair, had managed to escape at some unknown point. As for Julian on the floor, he successfully fainted from pure terror. It turned out it was the police who had just taken action, hitting the hitman's right hand. The hitman's weapon misfired, hitting Julian in the leg. Taking advantage of the chaotic moment when the hitman cried out in pain, the ropes on my hand had already been sliced open by me using a small blade. I bounded away from the danger zone. Subsequently, I was pulled into an embrace by Serafina, who rushed forward. Serafina hugged me tightly, her whole body trembling uncontrollably. She planted frantic kisses all over my face, trying to use this method to prove that I was still alive and well. Everything that just happened, even with the police standing by to ensure safety, Serafina remained on edge the entire time. She couldn't even dare to imagine if a single step went wrong, I might have lost my life. Just now, when the kidnapper asked Serafina who to choose, there was only one thought in her mind, and that was to choose Rowan. The two of us had been together for so long, the feelings were real. Even if she knew that from the very beginning, I indeed had motives of utilizing her to be with her. When she saw my emergency SOS text, Serafina's mind went completely blank. Countless thoughts flashed through her mind, but every single one of them involved completely dealing with Julian and Cassian once and for all. If it weren't for Julian, her Rowan wouldn't have suffered so much. She had simply been too soft-hearted before. Thank God you are still here." Serafina kissed my cheek, saying with utmost cherishing. I hugged Serafina tightly. Actually, I was also very scared. I prepared a lot, but there was never a truly foolproof plan. I was always gambling. Gambling on my weight in Serafina's heart. Gambling on this possibility of survival. I even prepared for the worst-case scenarios. For example, Serafina not seeing the emergency call and text in time. For example, the location and SOS signal to the police not getting transmitted. For example, the hitman being ruthless and just taking action against me directly. Even though I knew this hitman wasn't professional and was even just a scapegoat Cassian pulled out to take the fall, that sense of powerlessness, having my life out of my own control, still made me very terrified. But the more terrified I was, the calmer I had to be. My sister was once this helpless too. I still had to take revenge. I couldn't afford to be depressed. I also didn't want to know the answer Serafina hadn't spoken out loud just now. I only knew that after today's incident passed, Julian would absolutely have a terrible time. I had recorded everything that just happened, including Julian personally admitting that he ordered someone to deal with Alara. Actually, Cassian having an unprofessional hitman help Julian was clearly stating her stance. She had evidence, pushing everything from the past onto Julian alone. Father G could do without a son who only knew how to eat, drink, and play, but he couldn't do without Cassian. Now Cassian was the only one in their branch who could still shoulder the responsibilities. So what if she wasn't biologically his? As long as the money went into their pockets, then everything was negotiable. With Father G's tacit approval, all the crimes were borne by Julian alone. Even at this time, many victims who had previously been bullied by Julian stepped forward to testify. Julian instantly became like a stray dog, utterly isolated and without help. When he was first locked up in the station, he still threw tantrums and yelled arrogantly, claiming he was the eldest young master of the G family, and that someone would come to bail him out immediately. But as the days passed one by one, Julian not only wasn't bailed out, but was convicted. Life imprisonment. In prison, Julian's days weren't exactly a walk in the park either. He even offended quite a few people. For someone like Julian, a death sentence might actually have been a release. Life imprisonment meant he had to live a life worse than death behind bars. Julian went to jail. Cassian, this mastermind behind the scenes, was still alive and kicking. How could this be allowed? For my sake, Serafina completely broke ties with the G family's second branch, Father G's lineage. The G family's first and third branches were overjoyed, even snatching quite a bit of resources and connections from Father G's side. Even with all this, Cassian still barely managed to hold on. I didn't understand Cassian and had no way to deal with her. It was another year, the anniversary of Alara's death. I drove to the cemetery alone, placing a bouquet of chrysanthemums in front of the tombstone. I knelt on the ground, slowly recounting the things that had happened recently. Julian went to jail. I should be happy at a time like this. But somehow, I just couldn't feel happy. I didn't let Serafina tag along. I didn't know why, but ever since Julian's incident, I always felt a bit evasive when facing Serafina. As for what exactly I was avoiding, naturally, I was avoiding my true self. I knew that the real me wasn't the way Serafina initially perceived me to be, weak, kind, and resilient. I also had a scheming mind. I also plotted against others. I was somewhat confused, not knowing what kind of me Serafina actually liked. I was even a bit panicked, afraid to know Serafina's answer. Just like back then, I didn't ask Serafina who she actually chose in her heart when faced with the dilemma. I also had no confidence in my heart. After all, Serafina was someone I used Scamesto's snatch away from Julian. I had always been very clear on one point. As long as Serafina could be snatched away once, it was highly likely she could be snatched away a second time. In this romance, I also didn't have enough self-confidence. I stroked my sister Alara's tombstone, my eyes gazing blankly into the distance. Sister, do you think I should give up? A love mixed with ulterior motives and benefits, can it still be pure now? No one could give me an answer. Sometimes I even wanted to say to Serafina, let's break up. I'm sorry. But when I touched that string of Buddhist prayer beads on my wrist again, I felt greedy for this relationship. From the very beginning, everything I did actually had genuine sincerity mixed within it. It's just that I was used to running away. I sat in front of the graves of Alara and my parents for a while. I don't know how much time passed, but my whole body had grown somewhat icy and stiff. Exiting the cemetery, I saw an incredibly familiar car parked next to mine. The woman with exquisite features stood by the car, waiting silently. Seeing me walking over, the ice and snow on Serafina's face melted away, hanging a trace of an almost imperceptible smile. You're out? Serafina said a meaningless sentence, her hand covered mine. Feeling the piercing coldness, her brows instantly furrowed. Why's cold? Hurry up and get in the car. I smiled and shook my head. I'm fine, I'll be okay in a bit. She opened the car door for me, stepping aside to let me get in first, before following closely behind. I had Assistant Brooks drive your car back. Let's go home first. After a few simple sentences, the two of us were actually left looking at each other in silence. Serafina sensed my coldness and distance. She couldn't help but guess internally what exactly had happened. Is he unhappy because today is his sister's death anniversary? Serafina found a reasonable excuse for my coldness and secretly thought to herself, the suppression against Cassian must continue. That night, I once again, seamlessly, avoided Serafina's intimate contact. I still hadn't figured out my own inner thoughts, still hadn't made a final decision. I was unwilling to continue living so confusedly. Fighting with Cassian was going to be a protracted war. She wasn't as easy to deal with as Julian. The days ahead were still long, yet I felt somewhat lost. With my back turned to Serafina, I spoke softly. Serafina, give me a little more time. Okay, I'll wait for you. Serafina agreed, but her slender arm still locked me securely in her embrace. She had time to wait for me to figure things out, to snap out of my overthinking. The next day, at the full moon banquet for the daughter of the Bai family, Serafina and I attended representing the Su family. I accompanied Serafina, and after simply greeting quite a few people, we took our seats. Halfway through the banquet, I went to the restroom. Right after washing my hands, a person I never expected stood behind me. Do you trust Serafina that much? Do you still remember how you climbed up the ranks? Where there is a first Rowan, there will be a second Rowan. Cassian leaned against the wall, pretending to speak casually. Hearing this, my hand paused, making eye contact with Cassian in the mirror. What exactly are you trying to say? Sowing discord, or what? Cassian slowly walked behind me. One small hand rested on my chest, while the other touched my cheek, enforcing me to turn my head around. Cassian leaned in close, whispering by my ear. Not bad. You're very smart, it's just that it's still not enough. I somewhat didn't understand Cassian's meaning, unclear on exactly what she was trying to do. Did she think pulling these little stunts would be enough to affect Serafina? The next second, a furious voice rang out. Rowan, what are you two doing? Hearing Serafina's voice, I finally realized in hindsight that the posture between me and Cassian was indeed somewhat intimate. It was far too easy to make people's imaginations run wild. I instinctively pushed Cassian away, my expression filled with disgust. She kept pestering me and even said some random nonsense to me. Serafina looked me up and down, confirming that I hadn't been bullied. Then she grabbed Cassian by the collar. I'm warning you, do not lay a hand on Rowan, otherwise you will know the consequences. Cassian maintained her flat expression, but her eyes hid endless madness. Serafina knew best that the only things Cassian cared about were her career and money. Cassian was terrified of being poor. No matter what, she couldn't endure days without money. Don't be fooled by her ethereal aura, as if nothing mattered to her. But in reality, the only thing she cared about was money. She didn't take any other people or things to heart. Looking at her, she naturally seemed ethereal. But now, the Su family was constantly suppressing Cassian. Led by the Su family, other families also vaguely showed intentions of ostracizing Cassian. Cassian's own company lacked any unique, exclusive technology. It didn't hold much of an advantage against competitors. With the Su family and other families suppressing it like this, the small company that was just beginning to make its mark instantly lost all its momentum. Watching the money coming into her pockets dwindle more and more, Cassian naturally couldn't sit still. If she was having a hard time, she was going to make sure Serafina and I had a hard time too. What happened today was merely a beginning. Cassian gave Serafina a provocative smile. After the banquet ended, I remained silent the entire way. My gaze shifted away from Serafina several times. I was thinking about how to explain to her exactly what had happened just now. But Serafina was equally silent. It wasn't that she didn't want to ask what specifically happened just now, but rather her body was feeling unwell. Her stomach was churning, wanting to throw up but unable to. Her limbs felt sore and weak. If it weren't for the lipstick covering her original lip color, I probably would have noticed something was wrong with her much earlier. Serafina was breaking out in a cold sweat all over. She opened her mouth and used just her breath to say to me, "Go to the hospital." Seeing Serafina's condition was wrong, I immediately told the driver to change the route. After a long while, the test results came out. Serafina was pregnant. Looking at the text on the report, I suddenly felt my own head spinning a bit. Seeing Serafina wake up, I hurriedly asked about her condition. "How is it? Feeling okay?" Serafina nodded. She saw what was written on the report in my hand. She was pregnant. She took my hand and placed it on her lower abdomen. At this moment, I felt it was somewhat unbelievable. To once again have a family member connected by blood, this feeling was so miraculous. But then I looked at Serafina again, feeling somewhat unsure of what to do. Should this relationship continue? Obviously, the child in her belly had already given me the answer. I just didn't know what Serafina was thinking. "Rowan, let's get married. I will treat you well." Serafina held my hand with utmost sincerity. At this moment, she no longer looked like the high and mighty, decisive, and ruthless power holder of the past. Instead, she looked more like a naive young girl fresh out of a thatched cottage. Seeing her like this, I suddenly felt a sense of relief. Wasn't it clear enough now? Serafina loved me, undoubtedly. I pulled her tightly into my embrace. The marriage was finalized very quickly. It indeed caught Cassian completely off guard. She originally thought that after these two went back, they would definitely have a huge argument, and might even part on bad terms. At that time, she could take the opportunity to create even more misunderstandings between the two. While Serafina was troubled by relationship matters, she could let her company step up to the next level. But Cassian never expected that not only did these two not argue, they instead set a wedding date. But Cassian pivoted and came up with a new idea. At this critical juncture, the new universe group was exceptionally busy. When Serafina got busy, she had almost zero time to care about me. And at my most sensitive time, an anonymous person was sending me intimate photos related to Serafina every single day. At first, they were just photos taken from misleading angles. But later on, the intimacy between the two people in the photos became blatantly obvious. I tried hard to tell myself that this was just Cassian's scheme. I absolutely must not fall for it. Serafina had a child now. I had a new family member connected by blood. I was no longer alone. So, no matter what kind of fresh photos or texts the other party sent, I remained completely silent. I pretended I didn't see anything, not wanting to upset myself. I just had people organize those photos and texts in chronological order, packaged them all together, and sent them to Serafina. Since this was a mess she attracted, it was up to her to resolve it. Meanwhile, I enjoyed the kindness Father Su and Mother Su showed me. I learned many arts I never had access to before. Father Su and Mother Su gave me quite a bit of money, and I also saved some myself. Even if I left Serafina, I could live a normal life. And Serafina, besides being busy with new universe group's affairs, had also collected a lot of evidence regarding Cassian. Cassian operated cleanly, so collecting evidence was exceptionally difficult. But where there's a will, some evidence can always be found. Under Serafina's suppression, Cassian was jumping mad with anxiety. Her company was getting worse day by day. The undercover assistant sent to Serafina's side also hadn't made any progress for a long time. Unable to capture even a single photo of Serafina making intimate contact, Cassian finally made an incredibly impulsive decision. She spent some money and bribed a truck driver, telling him to keep an eye on Serafina. As soon as he found an opportunity, he was to ram right into her. The truck veered off the driving lane, cut across the road, and drove straight toward the sidewalk. It's just that the truck driver miscalculated, was a bit nervous, accidentally crashing into a stone pillar. Serafina thus narrowly escaped disaster. But the next second, a woman wearing a mask and hat took advantage of the chaos to give her a hard shove. The heavily pregnant Serafina fell to the ground. Almost instantly, warm blood flowed from between her legs. Subsequently, Serafina lost consciousness from the pain. In the hospital, I tightly held Serafina's hand, praying that she could pull through. I heard the doctor say Serafina was hemorrhaging severely, her life hanging by a thread, and it wasn't certain if the child could be delivered safely. I practically stopped breathing. I didn't dare to imagine how life could go on without Serafina. "Doctor, No matter what method you use, you must absolutely save my wife's life. My eyes were full of anxiety, but I didn't dare to say too much, terrified of interrupting the doctor's life-saving efforts. In my heart, I don't know how many prayers I directed at the heavens. I never believed in these things before. But for Serafina, I hated that I couldn't beg every single god and Buddha that existed. Cassian had already been caught. Serafina had collected enough evidence, but before handing it over to the police, I locked her up. The pain Serafina endured, she was going to endure it once too. A childbirth pain simulator strapped Cassian down. While she endured the highest level of pain, a burly man threw punches at her body, one after another. The burly man controlled his strength perfectly, ensuring her internal organs wouldn't rupture and cause her to die. But she definitely wasn't getting away with a lack of suffering. As long as Serafina didn't wake up for a day, I wouldn't let her out for a day. I don't know how long it took, but Serafina and the child finally came out of the delivery room safely. I looked at the pale-faced Serafina on the hospital bed, my heart aching beyond measure. The consequence of this heartache was, Cassian had to endure quite a bit more suffering. Even the company she cared about the most, due to poor management by her subordinates, fell into someone else's trap, being swindled out of a massive amount of liquid capital. It wasn't until Serafina had mostly recovered that Cassian finally saw the light of day again. She was already so thin she barely looked human. Her face was bruised and swollen, and her mental state was completely delirious. Holding the baby, I looked at this miserable Cassian and finally felt a sliver of vindication in my heart. But mostly it was heartache for my sister. Looking at Cassian in this state, I couldn't help but think of the deceased Alara. Sister, I finally got revenge for you. Those who harmed you have all received their deserved punishment. Finally, following the legal process, Cassian was sent inside to reunite with Julian. The massive boulder in my heart was finally set down. I was also able to completely confess my true inner thoughts to Serafina. After we confessed to each other, our relationship grew even stronger. Very soon, the long-awaited wedding between Serafina and me was held perfectly under the witness of everyone.